Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I want to begin by showing you a map here that looks at what's called precipitable water. We've seen this a few times, and again, when you look at this map, we're actually trying to gauge how much moisture is in the atmosphere. So what I want to point out is that for much of the southern region, we see these negative anomalies, and that is the drier air that has invaded the south and the southeast and has made things quite pleasant compared to what they had been for quite some time. The drier air is around to start the weekend, and it's going to be here for a while, and it's really got me thinking a lot about the bigger picture of how we slide into this second half of summer in terms of our moisture content both in the soil and in the atmosphere. And let's start in the atmosphere here. Overall, when we look at the latest release of the U.S. Drought Monitor, and this just came out yesterday, we actually saw some improvement in some of the pockets over parts of the southeast that were dry, and we have started to see some regions over here in parts of Texas showing up with some places with a little bit of drought. We're going to talk about that here in a few minutes because it appears that when we look out over the coming days and even weeks that maybe Texas is on the drier side of things as we press forward here after having a very, very wet start to the year. So that's our latest drought monitor. Let's now switch and just look at the last 7 days. Some of the improvement that we did see in parts of the southeast came as that broader front, which has now got all that dry air behind it, kind of slid through this area and is now parked right here, just sitting along, kind of cutting through Florida, but sitting along the Gulf Coast. And it'll be along this area that we're going to see a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity in the coming days. So it's kind of cleared some things out, but still right on the coast, we're going to be seeing some wetter weather. But there are a few places that did get missed. You do see pretty widespread 1 to 2, in some locations 3 inches of rainfall. There were some locally heavy pockets there, but a lot of this precipitation from Louisiana to the east. Meanwhile, Texas, much closer to that upper level ridge, and as a consequence, things were much drier there. And you can see a lot of folks went much of the last week without any precipitation at all in the state of Texas. So that's just kind of a quick zoomed in look here as to what we're looking at across the U.S. in terms of recent precipitation. Now, I told you, looking out longer term, we got to really try to understand what is the flow pattern that's giving us these two maps. On the left, I have the European ensemble over the next 15 days, looking at precipitation anomalies. On the right, I have the GFS. And there are some similarities. Overall, the pictures look pretty, well, roughly similar to one another. We do see a drier pattern overall for parts of the southeast, although there will be a corridor right in through here that's better resolved, I think, in the European model, again, on the left, that will be near average or wetter than average at times. So I'm really talking about there the delta region of the Mississippi River. Also, both models are picking up on a feature next week that does come in and around like this that could be bringing some wetter conditions into parts of Missouri and Arkansas. That'll be coming in from the north and west. And you'll see that in a few minutes here. But this is the broader picture of how things are looking over the next 15 days or so. And it's quite a bit different than what we had seen several times since, well, for the last several months in terms of total precipitation across the country. But specifically in the south, things are looking a little drier. So let's just zoom in on a high resolution model here. This is the European. We're just looking out through the next week. So I got you all the way out to next Friday morning. And overall, you can see if you just kind of let your eyes hover there from Texas all the way over to the Carolinas, lighter precipitation amounts. There will be a corridor, like I said, right in through here, especially getting down to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas and eastern Texas that could be getting a little bit more rain, and we'll see why in a few minutes. Turns out a lot of that precipitation is due to a couple of things. We have this stalled out boundary sitting right in through this area. That's the broader front here. And then a storm track through Canada. And it's interesting because they're going to be draping their fronts kind of together there and bringing in that moisture, and that's what we're going to end up getting quite a bit more shower and thunderstorm activity kind of centered there in the Delta region. But outside of that, the next week is looking to be relatively dry, and I don't see too much in the way of temperature extremes unless you're in parts of Texas. We'll take a look at that in a few moments here. So broader picture as we get our weekend going, it's really kind of summarized quite nicely in this map. A lot of shower and thunderstorm activity sitting out here in the Intermountain West, so New Mexico, you're certainly going to be getting more showers and thunderstorms. In fact, there's flood watches out for parts of New Mexico. Texas, yes, a drier week, higher atmospheric pressure still in control, and it'll be this boundary, again, that we're going to be watching. So if you live kind of inside the area I just highlighted here to the south of that line, you're going to see daily probability of thunderstorms between 20 and 50%. In parts of Florida, a little bit higher chances of having a lot of showers and thunderstorms as we progress through the next 4 to 5 days here. But this is kind of the name of the game. And the storm track is way up here in Canada, which has kind of eliminated some of our bigger players sweeping through, bringing a whole lot more rain as we progress through July. But that's very typical of the end of July and August to see a Canada storm track here. So that's your broader picture. To start things off, let's switch right now to the high resolution rapid refresh model. This is our highest resolution model. It's going to take us out here just through midday on Saturday. And you can just see the widely scattered storms sitting on that boundary right in here. So Florida, much better chance at seeing some storms right there along the Gulf Coast. That's, like I said, this corridor inside of that area is where we're going to see much of our thunderstorm activity, not only in the next 36 hours, which is what you're watching here, but pressing into the weekend and next week as well. Meanwhile, you can see the broader circulation on the upper level ridge still spinning here in the Intermountain West, keeping that area quite stormy in the coming days. So, we're seeing a lot of very similar things that we have been seeing continuing to play out in the longer term forecast. Now, before I show you both the 7-day temperature forecast and our look at our European model, I need to step up in the atmosphere and give you a broader perspective on the flow because there's some very interesting players at work. You will see several troughs that keep kind of rolling through the Canadian prairies, and that's what is going to be our major storm track setup. You'll also see a broader ridge that's sitting over this area, and at times a trough that swings into the northeast part of the United States. And that particular pattern is one, watch it here, that sets us up with more extreme heat to the west and less extreme heat over the southeast. In fact, as we kind of just let this play out, you can see that the broader flow is dipping into a trough here, a ridge in this area, and a broader trough that kind of sweeps over here. And that ridge, which is tending to elongate, is going to do a better job at keeping parts of the West United States, keeping parts of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona much warmer than average compared to what we're going to be seeing in the southeast. So while we have seen some extreme temperatures in the southeast up until this point, you can thank this broader trough that's sitting here between the Hudson and parts of the Canadian Maritimes there as to really getting you set up for some cooler weather. If this forecast pans out to be wrong as we slide out here into the end of this middle of the second week of August, I think the thing that I'll be watching most carefully is where does this particular trough set up? And the further west it goes, the better chances we have at more seasonally and even cooler temperatures in the southeast. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that major feature there. Okay, as we said, we're going to be watching really right along the Gulf Coast for much of our precipitation here in terms of thunderstorm activity. Texas relatively dry. Starting you off at 6 a.m. on Friday morning here. Let's play this one out. Again, what do we just see here as we progress through the day on Friday? It's really right offshore, right along this corridor that we're going to see much of our thunderstorm activity as higher atmospheric pressure hangs on even into the day on Saturday. So here's Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, really a pretty quiet start to the weekend unless you're right along the coast or over Florida where we're going to see more shower and thunderstorm activity. So this is Saturday night getting into Sunday morning now. Again, higher pressure still in control, but you need to be watching this guy up here. Yep, this low pressure system here is one that I want to keep an eye on for the southern region. And that's because as it progresses, this is Sunday afternoon, getting into Sunday evening, now getting into Monday morning, the larger cold front that will be associated with that low pressure system is actually going to work with what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico to be bringing in our first real significant chance of much more northerly progressing thunderstorm activity through Louisiana, Arkansas, and then eventually over to Mississippi. So you see the front, it's draped right in through this area on Monday night. So as I keep progressing forward, this is now Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. Now that frontal boundary is going to tend to stall right into this area. So that's why this corridor was seeing a lot more shower and thunderstorm activity, like I said, as we progress into the beginning and middle of next week. So this is now Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. You see the same thing. That boundary is still tucked away right in through here, which is where we're going to have our best chances at showers and thunderstorms. The big difference here is that this is just not a really big precipitation maker. It's a weaker boundary and it's stalled in that position. You can still see it. It's right in through there. And that's what basically from Tuesday through Thursday night is what we're looking at. Now, this is next week. So let's keep going out to next Friday morning and Friday afternoon and Friday evening. We will need to be watching for a system that could be sneaking down in this corridor right in through here, getting into Missouri and Arkansas. But I'm so far out in the forecast, I don't have a ton of confidence in its position at this point. But what do you not see? You don't see the models picking up on any sort of big low pressure system, big tropical system coming out of the tropics, which is good because we're now in the month of August in our forecast time period here. And I don't want to be seeing that yet. The main peak of the season is around September 10th. So it's good to see that the tropics are relatively quiet. We'll talk about why in just a moment. But I want to show you temperatures now. You're going to be noticing here throughout the day on Friday, look at this, upper 80s, lower 90s. This is very climatologically normal for this area. We do start to see some bigger, heat building back into Texas closer to that upper level ridge that's spinning here. But let's click play and see how things evolve into Saturday. Saturday across Texas, Oklahoma, even getting up into Kansas, we've got 95, 96, 97 in there. Meanwhile, stretch back across Louisiana, clear to the Carolinas, a lot of upper 80s, lower 90s. Same thing on Sunday. The heat is really tucked away back into parts of Texas. Although Texans, it's 93 to 97 degrees. Hey, we're okay. It's when it gets triple digit with the humidity that becomes a big problem. So getting you out into Monday, this is the time when the first system kind of moves through the Canadian Prairie. See the cool down here? That's when the front begins to drape into this area. So this is now Monday's high temperatures. Tuesday, see the cool down across the Great Lakes. That's when the front is now draped into this area. So again, we're looking in here at 80s, upper 80s, maybe lower 90s. Over in the southeast, lower 90s, but Texas, too close to that ridge, bigger heat. So now we're getting into next Wednesday, and this is where the heat really starts to pour on as the broader ridge begins to move a bit back to the east. And as it does so, look at the warmth we're going to see here. Now we're talking about upper 90s, getting into the triple digits here next Wednesday. And we'll take you all that to next Thursday and see the end of this. It's a very similar story for Texas. Got hotter, drier days coming for Texas. We're going to increase our evapotranspiration rates across this area. We're expecting somewhere around 2.5 to 3.5 inches of evapotranspiration through the next week in parts of Texas and Oklahoma due to the fact we're not expecting much rainfall and we are expecting some higher temperatures. Overall, if we just look at our next 5 days, you can see that the main story here, we get seasonable temperatures, slight cool bias in from basically eastern Texas all the way to the Carolina coast. But then days 6 through 10, that's when the heat really started to come back on New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. And we still stayed on the more seasonable side of things here east of the Mississippi River. And then again, taking you out to the 10 to 15 day time period, overall, remember the flow of what the atmosphere is doing is the trough is out here. It's doing something a bit more like this. So that's why we're going to tend to keep the extreme heat away from the southeast, but probably keep building it into this particular section of Texas and Oklahoma. All right. So that is kind of your longer range temperature outlook getting all the way out to the 10th of August here from the European model. Good news is not a whole lot going on in the tropics right now. We had some concern about, that boundary and what it was going to be doing for showers and thunderstorms here, but they're not going to have the ability to organize into any sort of system that's of importance for us. So National Hurricane Center is saying, hey, getting you all the way out to next week, we've got no real risk of tropical activity. There's a lot of things that are going on, but one of the bigger things is even though we do see active convection in the African monsoon, so in other words, we're seeing a lot of storms here, and these storms kind of come out and they're born on these tropical waves, these little north-south meandering flow here in the tropical Atlantic. We do see some extremely dry and dusty air, and I brought this up a few times this week, but let's animate this. You're looking here at the amount of dust coming off of the Sahara. And so these storms are having to chew on quite a bit of drier and dusty air, and as a consequence, we're just not seeing them really, fulfill their potential in terms of becoming more organized areas of tropical convection. So really not seeing a whole lot coming out of the main development region, but I want you to remember this time of year, as we get into the end of July, beginning of August, the corridor around which we typically see a lot of tropical activity is really closer here to the Lesser Antilles, moving through the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico and Western Atlantic. So we watch this area once we get to the middle and end of August through the rest of the season. So that just at least gives you some perspective on why the tropics have been relatively quiet, which is good news for a lot of us here, given that we don't have a major drought situation setting up in the south. Because remember, sometimes at this time of year, we want a tropical system to bring us some rain if we're desperate for it. But so far, things are looking halfway decent. We'll go ahead and wrap this forecast video up right here. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions, thank you for your attention. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.